I remember the exact shade of light in my kitchen that morning, soft golden filtered through the lace curtain. The kettle had just clicked off, and I was pouring my second cup of Earl Grey when I noticed the envelope. It was lying there between my water bill and a flyer for gutter cleaning. White heavy stock with the emblem of Redstone Federal Bank stamped in dark blue. My first thought was that it was a marketing ad, but something about it, maybe how plain it was, maybe how official, made me open it. Dear Mrs. Margaret Elston, this is a final notice regarding your delinquent mortgage payment on the property located at 1917 W. Stonewell Drive. Amount due $6,870.55. I froze. My first thought wasn't even fear, it was confusion. Stonewell Drive. I didn't own any property there. I only had this house, the one James and I bought 31 years ago and paid off 18 years ago. I read it again, slower this time. Then again. The paper shook in my hand. This payment represents the second installment of the mortgage loan originated March 3rd in the amount of $800,000 over 30 years. That's when my hand trembled so much I had to put the cup down. $800,000. No, I whispered out loud to no one but the quiet kitchen. No, that's not possible. My first instinct was to call the bank and tell them they'd sent this to the wrong person. Surely it was a mistake. Some typo. A computer glitch. But the letter had my full name, my address, even the last 4 digits of my social security number. I dialed the customer service line, pressing through the maze of options with shaking fingers until I heard a human voice. Thank you for calling Redstone Federal. This is Tessa. How may I assist you today? Yes, hello. My name is Margaret Elston. I just received a notice about a missed mortgage payment, but I haven't taken out any loan. I think there's been a serious mistake. Let me look into that for you, ma'am, she said kindly. Can you confirm your mailing address and date of birth? I did. She paused. I could hear typing on the other end, then a low hum of surprise. Mrs. Elston, according to our system, you're listed as the primary borrower on a loan originated on March 3rd this year. The property is located at 1917 West Stonewell Drive. That's impossible, I said. I've never even heard of that address. The loan documents on file include a signed agreement, a copy of your social security card, your last 3 years of tax returns, and a color scan of your driver's license. But I never submitted any of those, I said. This is fraud. Someone used my name. There was a pause. In that case, ma'am, I recommend contacting our fraud investigations department and also filing a police report. Until the matter is resolved, however, the account is still your responsibility. I hung up the phone slowly. My hands were numb. A mortgage, $800,000. Someone had used my name, my information, my history, my identity. I looked around my kitchen, the old oak cabinets, the pale linoleum we never got around to replacing, the creaky chair James always used. All of it was real, familiar, mine. And now somewhere there was a luxury house with my name on the deed, a debt with my name on the contract. And I had no idea who did it. That evening, I called Marcus. He picked up on the third ring, his voice casual. Hey, Mom, everything okay? Marcus, I got a letter today, I said, trying to keep my voice even. From the bank, about a mortgage, for $800,000, in my name. There was a pause. What, that's crazy. You must have gotten someone else's mail. No, it has my name. My social security number. They say I'm behind on the second payment. Mom, he chuckled, but it felt strained. You probably got scammed. Just throw it out. It's not a scam ad, Marcus. I called the bank. They say someone used all my information. Another pause. Well, don't freak out, okay? I'll come over tomorrow. We'll look at it together. I need to report it. No, don't do anything yet. Maybe it's just a clerical mistake. Let me handle it. Let me handle it. That's what Marcus always said. About bills, about the garage, even when I didn't ask. But suddenly, something about that phrase made my skin crawl. Later that night, I sat in bed with the letter on my lap and a million thoughts churning in my head. Who could have done this? Who had access to my personal documents? I opened my nightstand drawer. My tax folders were missing. My spare ID photocopy I kept in a small envelope for emergencies gone. My hand covered my mouth. Amy, my daughter-in-law. She had helped me reorganize that drawer 3 weeks ago when she was tidying up. She said it was getting cluttered. Was it her? Or worse, was it them? Marcus and Amy. No, that wasn't possible. Was it? I didn't sleep much that night. And when I did, I dreamed of a house I'd never seen with windows I'd never looked through, slowly wrapping around me like a vice. And I was trapped inside behind locks I never turned, trapped by people I thought I could trust. The next morning, I was still in my nightgown when Amy pulled into my driveway. I hadn't even called her. I watched from behind the curtain as she stepped out of a sleek new black Lexus SUV. I hadn't seen that car before. She'd always driven a sensible grey Honda, the one she used to pick up the kids from school, the one with the dented rear bumper and the proud soccer mum sticker peeling off the back. But this was a different kind of car. It had presence, shine, status. She didn't mention the car when she came in. Just a quick hug and a bright, too cheerful morning mom, like nothing was wrong. Like I hadn't left her 3 voicemails about a mortgage in my name. Marcus wasn't with her. I led her into the kitchen, offered her coffee. She declined, said she was doing a cleanse. I brought over some croissants for you, she said, placing a fancy brown paper bag on the counter. From that bakery you love DeLuca's, right? It was almost enough to distract me. Almost. But then I saw the envelope again, still sitting on the table where I'd left it last night. I need to talk to you, I said. Amy's eyes followed mine to the envelope. She blinked slowly. Oh, she said, like she hadn't expected it to be there. Right, the letter Marcus mentioned. I handed it to her, watched her face as she read. She was good. Very good. There was the slight widening of her eyes, the practiced furrow of her brow, the little inhale of dismay. Wow, she murmured, flipping to the second page. This is intense. It's not mine, I said. I didn't take out that loan. I've never even been to Stonewell Drive. I know, she said quickly. This must be a mistake, or someone stole your identity. You should probably get a lawyer. I already called the bank, I interrupted. They have all my documents on file. Tax returns, social, even my signature. Amy looked at me, carefully, like she was measuring her words. Well, maybe you accidentally gave that stuff out. You know, with all the scams going around lately. No, I said. I keep my paperwork in the drawer in my bedroom. The one you helped me organize. She blinked. Just once. Oh, come on, Margaret. You can't think I had anything to do with this. I don't know what to think, Amy. The room went quiet. Then she laughed. It was a soft, strained sound. Okay, I get it. This is scary. But accusing your family isn't the way to handle this. I stared at her perfect nails, her expensive sweater, her new car. Something didn't add up. Something reeked of desperation dressed up as success. Did Marcus know about this, I asked. Her smile didn't even falter. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Of course not, she said. And honestly, it's kind of hurtful that you'd even ask. She stood up, brushing imaginary crumbs off her leggings. Look, I'll talk to Marcus. We'll figure this out. But you need to stay calm, okay? Don't go stirring things up. There's no need to panic. She patted my shoulder like I was a child. I didn't say another word. After she left, I sat on the porch with my tea and stared at that empty driveway haunted by the glint of her Lexus. Who buys a luxury car in the middle of a recession? Who suddenly switches vehicles without mentioning it? I picked up my old laptop, the one Marcus bought me for Christmas 2 years ago, and searched for the address again. 1917 West Stonewell Drive. The listing popped up immediately. It was a 3-bedroom lakeside property with floor-to-ceiling windows, a double garage, and a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The estimated value, just under $1 million. And right there, buried in the property records, was the name of the buyer, Halcyon Maple LLC. I didn't know what that meant at first, but after a few more clicks, I found the company's filing. The owner listed was Marcus D. Elston, my son, my only child. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. How could the boy I raised, the boy I stayed up nights with when he had the flu, the boy I packed lunches for every school day who cried when his dad died, how could that boy take my name and my life and use it like this, without telling me, without asking? Was I just a stepping stone to him, a convenient signature? A house, a loan, a company name, a car. The pieces were clicking into place. The croissants, the smile, the denial. It wasn't just Amy. Marcus was in this too. I called the bank again. I asked for a full copy of the loan documents. They said they'd email them to me within 24 hours. That night, I pulled out a faded shoebox from under my bed. It was full of paperwork, my will, James's death certificate, some old photos. And on top, a yellowed envelope labeled signatures. Inside were forms I'd signed over the years. Tax returns, an old lease, my driver's license renewal from 2014. My handwriting, neat, careful, consistent. Nothing like the signature on that loan application. The next morning, the email came through. I clicked on the attachment and scrolled to the final page. There it was, a signature that looked like mine, if you squinted, like someone trying to forge it from memory. But no one else would have known the difference. No one but me. I sat very still, and for the first time in years, I felt something settle in my chest, not fear, not panic. Resolve. I had been quiet too long. I had handed over too much, deferred, too often let them make decisions for me for too many years. But not this time. This time, I wasn't going to let it slide. This time, I wasn't going to be the nice mom who forgave and forgot. I picked up the phone and searched for the number my friend Louise gave me last fall after her own daughter took out credit cards in her name. June Merritt, elder law, financial abuse defense. I hit call. Good morning, this is June Merritt's office. Yes, I said. I need to make an appointment. Someone's taken a loan out in my name, and I think it was my own family. When I stepped into June Merritt's office 2 days later, I was expecting a sterile environment, stiff chairs, grey carpet, cold coffee. What I found instead was sunlight pouring through wide windows, a collection of succulents lining the sill, and the scent of lavender drifting softly in the air. The receptionist offered me tea. Herbal, not caffeinated, for calm. I clutched my handbag like it held my last breath. Mrs. Elston, a warm voice called. I looked up and saw a tall woman in her early 60s, dressed in a navy pantsuit and low heels. Her silver hair was cut short and neat, her expression open but sharp. I'm June Merritt, she said, extending a hand. Come on in. I told her everything. The letter, the bank's call, the loan documents, the signature that wasn't mine. Amy's arrival with pastries and excuses, the new car, the LLC, Marcus's name on the company. I didn't cry. Not then. My voice trembled only once when I said they didn't even ask. They just took. June listened without interruption, only nodding occasionally, jotting things in a leather-bound notebook. When I finished, the silence between us was so heavy, I thought I might collapse under it. Then she spoke. Mrs. Elston, this is financial fraud. And unfortunately, it happens more often than people think, especially within families. But it's my son, I said quietly, my own son, which makes it worse, not better. She leaned forward. What your son and daughter-in-law did was not just unethical, it was criminal. They used your personal information to obtain a mortgage loan in your name without your consent. That's identity theft, that's wire fraud, that's forgery. The words landed like thuds on my chest. I don't know if I could ever press charges, I said. They're my family. June's expression didn't soften, but it didn't harden either. Let me ask you something, she said. If it had been a stranger, someone who broke into your home, stole your papers, and used your identity to buy a mansion, would you hesitate to go to the police? No, I said. Then why is it different? Because they're my children. June nodded slowly. Exactly. And that's what they're counting on. On the way home, I took the long route, drove through old neighborhoods I hadn't seen in years, past the school Marcus attended as a boy, past the park where we used to picnic on Saturdays. I kept thinking of the tiny things I'd let slide, how Marcus insisted on managing my online banking after James died, how Amy rolled her eyes when I said I didn't want to move into a retirement condo, how they spoke to me polite, but always a little too loud, a little too slow, like I wasn't quite all there. At the time, I told myself they meant well. Now I wasn't so sure. That night, I pulled out my journal. I hadn't written in it since James passed, and even then it was mostly scribbled grocery lists or birthday reminders. But I needed somewhere to pour it all out. I began a new page, things I let slide that I shouldn't have. Letting Marcus put his name on my emergency contact forms, even when he started making decisions for me instead of with me. Letting Amy help organize my files. Laughing off the time Marcus said, "You won't need this old house forever." staying quiet when they brought up that nice little senior living apartment 4 times in 1 month, believing I didn't have the right to say no just because I didn't want to upset them. I stared at the list, then added one more, thinking love meant silence. The next morning, I met June again. She had prepared a plan. "We'll start with a civil suit," she explained. "That'll let us go after the property and potentially cancel the loan. We'll gather documents, verify your alibi, and build a case. If they resist or escalate, we can then consider criminal charges." "Do you think I'll lose them?" I asked. June looked me in the eyes. "You've already lost something. Your trust, your dignity. If they loved you, truly loved you, they'd have never done this." It was the first time someone had said that out loud, and it hit like a cold slap of truth. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop again. This time, I searched for Halcyon Maple LLC on the business registry. There it was founded 2 months ago. Owner Marcus D. Elston, manager Amy Elston. They hadn't even tried to hide it. And on the public real estate records, I found the title for the property at 1917 West Stonewell Drive. The loan was in my name, but the property, it was deeded to Halcyon Maple LLC. I was being erased, not just used. Erased. My name held the debt. Their name held the asset. I closed the browser and leaned back, my heart pounding. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't desperation. It was deliberate, calculated, and it had been happening for longer than I realized. I called Louise that evening, the friend who'd given me June's number. She'd been through her own storm. Her son had drained her savings to cover gambling debts, forging her name on 4 credit card applications. I let it go. At first, she'd told me once. Didn't want to make waves. "You know what happened? He did it again." "How did you know you had to fight?" I asked her now. Because I realized Louise said that if I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would. Not even my own child. Especially not my own child. That night, I sat by the window with my tea, looking out into the quiet street. The house next door had their porch lights on. Wind chimes tinkled somewhere down the block. And I knew this was no longer just about money. This was about who I was allowed to be in my own life. I picked up my phone and texted June. "Let's move forward. I'm ready." 3 days later, June called me with news. "I pulled the real estate deed from the clerk's office," she said. "The property at 1917 West Stonewell is officially registered under Halcyon Maple LLC. But the mortgage, the liability, is entirely in your name. It's exactly as we feared. They used you for the debt and kept the asset for themselves." I didn't respond right away. I was staring out the window, watching a squirrel dart across my lawn, leaping over the cracks in my sidewalk. "They've been making the payments through the company," she added. "Probably to avoid drawing attention. But if they miss even one, the bank comes after you, not them. So I'm the backup plan." I said the word sharp in my mouth. "Exactly." There was a pause. "June, I've never even seen that house." That night, I pulled up Google Maps on my laptop. I typed in the address 1917 West Stonewell Drive. There it was. A drone shot photo hovered above it. A pristine 2-story home, tucked along a wooded curve, the backyard tapering off into a still glassy lake. A private dock extended into the water. A rowboat was tied to the post. It looked like something out of a retirement brochure. Or a realtor's dream. It was stunning, clean, remote, expensive. I clicked on the link to the listing. It had sold 3 months ago. There were still pictures inside polished hardwood floors, recessed lighting waterfall countertops. A kitchen larger than my entire downstairs. There was a fireplace in the bedroom, a soaking tub beside a window that faced the water. And I couldn't stop thinking, they never even told me, never once invited me over. They used my name to get their dream life, and didn't even think I deserved a look. A week later, I got an unexpected phone call. From my old neighbor Cora, the woman who lived 2 doors down from Marcus and Amy before they moved. "Margaret, honey," she began. "I know we haven't spoken much, but did you hear Marcus and Amy bought a new place by the lake? Moved out last month." I heard I said carefully. "Well," she said, lowering her voice like she always did when gossip was good. "They threw a party last weekend. Huge one, catered. Champagne valet parking string lights over the dock. Real fancy." My stomach turned. "They said the house was a gift from you," she added almost as an afterthought. "Everyone was so touched by how generous you were, especially at your age." I could hear the implication in her voice at your age. I swallowed. Thanks for letting me know, Cora. When I hung up, I sat down on the edge of my bed and stared at the rug. A gift. They told people I gave them the house. Not that I was tricked. Not that it was fraud. But that I was generous. Like some eccentric old woman handing out deeds. The worst part wasn't the lie. It was that no one had questioned it. I called June the next morning. I want to see it in person, I said. The house. Yes, I want to stand in front of it. I want to see what my name paid for. She paused. Are you sure? Yes. She agreed to come with me. Saturday morning, we drove out together. The neighborhood was as exclusive as it looked online. Tall trees, no sidewalks, silence between the gates. Every home had its own manicured lawn and its own set of secrets. We parked 2 houses down and walked. I felt the nerves building with every step. And then we were there, number 1917. The stone sign was carved with their last name, the Elstons. Flowers were freshly planted. The windows were spotless. Music was playing somewhere inside jazz, faint but elegant. I stepped closer to the property line, heart hammering in my chest. They were living in it, living in something they built on my stolen identity. And I had never even been offered a tour. Not a thank you, not a word. I took in the details. The oversized porch swing, the brand new grill, Amy's yoga mat rolled up neatly on a bench. I remembered when Marcus was 7, and afraid of the dark, how he used to drag his sleeping bag into our bedroom. How he cried when James had to work late. How he clung to me in grocery stores, just in case I disappeared. How did we get here? June placed a hand on my arm. You okay? I nodded. No, but I'm not leaving either. That night, I made another list in my journal. Things I gave that were taken for granted. My signature. My credit. My silence. My kindness mistaken for weakness. My motherhood used like currency. At the bottom, I wrote, "This house was never a gift. It was a theft dressed in ribbon." On Monday morning, June filed the first official motion. We were suing Marcus and Amy for fraud identity theft and the unlawful use of my financial assets. The paperwork was ready. All that was left now was to serve it. I asked June a question I never thought I'd ask anyone. If they're throwing another party soon, would it be legal to serve them there? She blinked, then smiled. Yes, but it would make a scene. I'm counting on it. It wasn't difficult to find out about the second party. My friend Doris called 2 days after June filed the motion. She works part-time at Silver Thread Catering, and her granddaughter Rachel was on the event team that weekend. Margaret, she said breathlessly, I didn't want to stir the pot, but your son and his wife are hosting another party at that lake house. Saturday night, big one. 40, maybe 50 guests. Champagne string quartet valet parking the whole show. Rachel said they're calling it a housewarming gala. I laughed. Not the amused kind. The kind you laugh when you're too angry to cry. A gala. Funded by my name, my stolen credit, my silence. I thanked Doris hung up and called June immediately. They're having another party, I said, and I want the papers served right then and there. There was a pause. We can make that happen, June replied. But are you sure you want to be there in person? I'm not there for revenge, I said. I just want them to look me in the eyes when the truth walks through the door. Saturday arrived in a warm breeze and evening gold. I stood in front of my mirror for a long time deciding what to wear. Not to look flashy, not to fit in with their guest list, but to feel like myself, like a woman who still had dignity. I settled on a dark green dress with a high collar and simple pearl earrings. It was the same dress I wore to James's retirement party. As I adjusted my scarf, I thought about how proud he'd been of Marcus back then. How he used to say, he's smart, Maggie. Smarter than I ever was. But he's got your heart. If only that had been true. June met me at a small cafe not far from Stonewell Drive. With her was a tall man in a navy suit and wire-rimmed glasses, Kenneth Parks, the court-appointed process server. This is strictly legal, he told me gently. No drama. Just hand the papers, state the nature of the notice, and walk away. I understand, I said, but I'm walking in with you. He hesitated, then nodded. The house glowed like a lantern in the evening light. Cars lined the private road. Music floated out over the lake string quartet, just like Doris said. Voices laughed in rhythm with clinking glasses. Candlelight flickered along the wraparound porch. Guests were arriving in heels, suits pressed linen. I walked up beside Kenneth, my heels clicking on the polished stone pathway. Every step felt like walking through wet cement. We reached the porch. The young hostess greeted us with a practiced smile. "Are you with catering?" she asked. In a manner of speaking, Kenneth said coolly, then nodded to me. "We need to speak to the lady of the house." The girl hesitated, glanced between us, then stepped aside. "Mrs. Elston is inside, right this way." We found them in the center of the living room, surrounded by smiling friends and white wine. Amy was radiant, laughing, her hand looped through Marcus's elbow. He wore a tailored navy blazer and that polished grin he used when he was networking. When he saw me, the smile dropped. "Mom," he said, stunned. I stopped just outside the circle of guests. Amy turned slowly, her face drained of color. What are you doing here?" she whispered. Kenneth stepped forward. "Mrs. Amy Elston. I'm serving you with official notice of civil proceedings filed by Margaret Elston regarding financial fraud, identity theft, and unlawful use of her credit in the purchase of this property." He held out the envelope. She didn't take it at first, just stared, like the world had cracked open and something ancient and furious was crawling through. Finally, she snatched it. "I can't believe you're doing this," she hissed. "I can't believe you did this," I said. The guests were staring now, silent, holding their glasses wide-eyed. "This house," I said to the room, "was bought in my name, with a loan I never signed, with documents I never handed over. Forged, faked, hidden. And now they host parties in it like they earned it." "Mom, don't." Marcus stepped toward me, reaching for my arm. "Not here." "Why not?" I asked. "Is this not the housewarming party? Am I not the one who gifted it to you according to your story?" Amy's lips trembled. "You're ruining everything." I shook my head. "You already ruined it. I'm just delivering the bill." Silence. Then a quiet gasp from one of the guests. Someone put down their glass. And one by one the crowd began to disperse, slipping out embarrassed, murmuring apologies or awkward excuses. I turned to Kenneth. "Thank you." "My pleasure, ma'am," he said, and exited as quietly as he had arrived. I looked at Marcus one last time. His eyes were a mixture of panicked disbelief and shame. "You didn't even think I'd notice," I said softly. "You thought I'd be too old, too tired, too grateful for scraps to fight back." "Mom, please." I raised a hand to silence him. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to remind you I am still your mother. But I am also a person, a woman, and I will not be used." Amy had sunk into a chair, the envelope clutched in her lap like a dead thing. I turned and walked out the door. Outside, the lake rippled under the moonlight. A breeze stirred the trees. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a champagne cork pop. But it wasn't for me. And I was glad. I had arrived as the woman they forgot, and left as the woman they would never ignore again. The morning after the party, I expected my phone to explode. But it didn't ring. Not once. No angry voicemails from Marcus. No indignant text from Amy. Not even a passive-aggressive group message from my daughter-in-law's book club friends. Silence, thick, deliberate silence, the kind that hums with unspoken rage. It didn't comfort me, it didn't vindicate me, it just hurt. Because even after everything, the betrayal, the lies, the theft, there was still some stupid aching part of me that wanted one of them to show up at my door and say, "I'm sorry." Instead, the only call I got was from June. "I spoke with the court this morning," she said. "The process server's documentation was accepted. They have 21 days to respond to the complaint. If they don't, the judge can issue a default ruling in your favor. And if they do respond," I asked, "then we go to court. Either way, we're ready." I was quiet for a moment. "Did I do the right thing?" "Legally, absolutely," June said. Then more softly, emotionally. "That's harder to measure." Later that afternoon, I took a walk around my neighborhood. The air smelled like leaves and chimney smoke. October had finally arrived, crisp and gold-edged. I passed the Benson twins raking their yard and Mrs. Carmichael sweeping her porch. She waved. I waved back. I didn't tell them where I'd been last night. Didn't explain why I felt like I'd aged 5 years overnight. Instead, I stopped by the bakery and bought a single cinnamon roll. Sat on the bench in the park across the street. Watched kids tumble down slides and parents sip coffee from paper cups. Everything looked so ordinary. But I didn't feel ordinary anymore. I felt cracked open. When I got home, I checked my voicemail. There was one new message. From Doris. "Hey, sweetie, just wanted to let you know word's spreading fast. A couple folks at the party called my niece to cancel upcoming orders. Said they didn't want their name tied to scandal. Don't let it get to you, okay? You did what was right. Proud of you. I smiled, just a little, then sat in my quiet kitchen and ate my cinnamon roll with tea. That evening, I pulled out an old photo album, the kind with the thick pages and plastic covers yellowing at the edges. Inside were snapshots from decades past birthdays, Christmases, cookouts. I found a photo from Marcus's 10th birthday. He was grinning with frosting on his nose, holding up a Lego set. I stood behind him, with my arms wrapped around his shoulders. We both looked so happy, so unaware of the future. What changed? Where did we lose each other? Was it me? Was it him? Or was it just time? The next day, the phone finally rang. Marcus. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello, Mom. His voice was clipped formal. I'm calling to say, we got the papers. I don't appreciate how you handled things. I didn't appreciate being lied to, I replied. You could have just come to us. We could have worked something out privately. I did come to you. I brought it up. You told me not to make a fuss. Amy gaslit me. You both lied. There was a long pause. Do you have any idea what you've done to our reputation? He asked, voice rising. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? He didn't answer. Marcus, I said quietly, you used me. You took what wasn't yours. You let your wife manipulate my trust and you didn't stop her. That's not a misunderstanding. That's betrayal. You always have to make yourself the victim, he muttered. I'm not a victim, I said. Not anymore. Look, he said. We're talking to a lawyer. You'll hear from them soon. Then he hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand. There it was. No apology. No remorse. Only threats. Even now, he saw this as an inconvenience, not a reckoning. And that hurt more than anything, because I realized he didn't think he had done anything wrong. That night, I called June again. He's hiring a lawyer, I said. I expected that she replied. It doesn't change anything. I thought he might apologize. I don't know. At least acknowledge what he did. People rarely admit to the full depth of their own cruelty, June said. Especially when they think they were entitled to it. I swallowed hard. I still love him, you know. I know. I don't think he loves me back. Not the real me. There was a pause. Then it's even more important that you protect her. I ended the call and turned off all the lights in the house except the one in the hallway. I left my bedroom door open, just like I used to when Marcus was a boy scared of the dark. But this time it wasn't for him. It was for me, to remind myself I wasn't alone, that I was still here, still standing, even in the silence. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday afternoon. I was folding laundry in the living room, halfway through an old movie on TV, when I heard the mail slot click. I almost didn't check it lately. The only things I'd been getting were sympathy cards from neighbors and passive-aggressive catalogs addressed to current resident. But this one stood out. White, heavy, embossed in silver. A return address from Levine and Hargrove, a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a letter on thick paper, a response to my civil suit, and a proposed settlement. Our client, Mrs. Amy Elston, is willing to assume full ownership of the mortgage and all associated liabilities, contingent upon your agreement to withdraw the civil complaint and decline to pursue criminal charges. Furthermore, she offers a settlement of $15,000 as restitution for distress and inconvenience. This offer is made in good faith and with the intention of preserving familial relations. I read it twice, then once more. No mention of Marcus, no apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Just legal phrasing, papered guilt. I placed the letter flat on the kitchen table and stared at it. A few minutes later, the phone rang. It was Amy. Her voice was composed but tired. Margaret, she said, you got the letter. I did. I hope you'll consider it seriously. We're trying to make this right. Are you? I asked. I know you're upset, and I don't blame you. But dragging this through court helps no one, especially not the family. The word family stuck in my throat. Amy, I said, choosing my words slowly, have you thought about what you've done? Really thought about it. I made a mistake, she said quickly. We both did. But we've been making the payments. We had every intention of keeping it quiet to protect you. Protect me. I almost laughed. You used my name to take out a loan for a house you never even told me about. You forged my signature. Then you lied to me, made me doubt my memory, told people I gave you the house as a gift. And now you want me to believe this was to protect me." She was quiet for a moment. "Then I didn't think you'd find out." That made me go still. Not, "I didn't think it would hurt you." Not, "I didn't think it would go this far." Just, "I didn't think you'd find out." That was the truth. This wasn't about remorse. It was about exposure. "I'm not angry you wanted a better house," I said, voice low. "I'm angry you thought the only way to get it was to steal from me." "I didn't," she started. "Yes, you did." I heard her exhale sharply. "Margaret, if this goes to court, we'll be humiliated. Zoe will find out. Do you really want your granddaughter to know her parents went through this?" I felt a coldness bloom in my chest. "You should have thought about that before you involved me." After we hung up, I called June. She wasn't surprised. "They're offering restitution because they know they can't win," she said. "The paper trail is too clean. We have the forged signature, your alibi bank statements showing corporate payments. If we go to trial, we'll win. But this is your decision. If you take the settlement, you'll avoid months of court. You'll get financial relief. And they'll keep their names out of the criminal system. That's what they're buying, your silence. And if I say no, then we file a motion for full damages. And we notify the bank, which means potential criminal charges, possible foreclosure, public court records." I closed my eyes. It was a deal with the devil either way. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the letter. $15,000. That's what my dignity was worth to them. That's what they thought would make me stay quiet. But it wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about being erased, turned into a signature, a social security number, a silent line of credit. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text. From Marcus. "Can we talk?" Just 3 words. But they felt like a window cracking open in a sealed room. I replied, "If you want to talk, you come here, alone." He arrived 20 minutes later, still in work clothes, dress shirt rolled at the sleeves, tie loose. He looked older than he had the last time I saw him. Or maybe I was just seeing him clearly for the first time. He didn't hug me, just sat across from me at the table. "I'm not proud of what we did," he said, eyes down. I got in over my head. Amy kept pushing. I didn't stop her. "Why not?" "I don't know," he said. "Because I thought it'd be easy, because I didn't think you'd notice, because part of me thought, maybe you owed us." That last part stung. "I owed you." He shrugged helplessly. "You always had the house, the savings, the pension. Amy said you never helped us the way her parents did, that we were doing everything alone." "I paid your college tuition," I said flatly. "I know. I co-signed your first car." "I know. I gave you $10,000 for your wedding." He nodded, quieter now. "I know. Then tell me, Marcus, what exactly did I owe you?" He didn't answer. He just sat there, and for the first time I didn't feel guilt. I felt pity, because he wasn't remorseful. He was afraid of losing everything he stole. "I'm not accepting the settlement," I said. His head snapped up. "Mom, I'm not going to let you pay your way out of this. There has to be consequences. Not because I want revenge, but because I want you to understand that I am not disposable. I am not just your mother. I am a person. And you can't erase people without consequence." He stood up. "So that's it then?" "No," I said. "That's the beginning." He walked out the door without another word. I stood at the window and watched him drive away. For once I didn't cry. I just breathed. Deep, full, unapologetic. The apology I wanted hadn't come. But maybe that was the point. Maybe I wasn't the one who needed to receive an apology. Maybe I was the one who needed to stop waiting for one. The next morning, the house was too quiet. No phone calls, no texts, not even the usual email coupons from the grocery store. Just silence. The kind that doesn't fill a room, but stretches it, pulls at its seams, reminds you how alone you are. But I wasn't lonely. I was determined. Because if I had learned anything in these past few weeks, it was, this silence is how they keep you controlled. Silence is how abuse lives on. And I wasn't going to stay silent. Not for Marcus. Not for Amy. Not even for Zoe. Especially not for Zoe. She was 12. Smart, observant, kinder than she let on. And I had been watching her become a miniature version of her mother. The curated smile. The way she rolled her eyes when I brought up the past. The way she corrected me when I said something outdated. She wasn't rude, just rehearsed. I saw Amy in her posture. I saw Marcus in her eyes. But she was still my granddaughter, still a child, and I wasn't going to let her grow up believing that what her parents did was okay. That betrayal could be gift-wrapped and passed off as family business. She deserved the truth, even if it cracked her world. I didn't expect her to show up, but she did. Sunday afternoon, Amy's car pulled up in front of my house tires, crunching softly over the gravel. Zoe climbed out before her mother could even unbuckle. She walked up the path with a backpack slung over one shoulder, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. I opened the door before she knocked. "Hi, Grandma." "Hi, sweetheart." Amy didn't come up to the porch. She stayed in the driver's seat, sunglasses on, tapping something into her phone. Zoe stepped inside and looked around, like she hadn't seen my house in years. In truth, it had only been 4 months. But 4 months is a long time when you're 12. We sat at the kitchen table. I made her hot chocolate just like I used to. She didn't say much at first, just sipped looking at the steam swirl. Then Mom says you're mad at her. I nodded, that's true. She said you're making things complicated. I took a deep breath. What did she tell you about the house? That you gave it to them. Because we needed more space. Because you wanted us to have a better life. And do you believe that? Zoe hesitated. I don't know. Do you want to know the truth? She looked up at me, her eyes, Marcus's eyes, searching my face. Yes, she said quietly. So I told her. Not everything. Not the legal details. Not the phrases like wire fraud or civil litigation. But the story, the real one. That someone used my name without permission. That I didn't sign any papers. That the house was bought with my stolen identity. And that, instead of telling the truth, her parents threw parties and told lies. Zoe didn't cry, but I saw her lip tremble. That's really bad, she whispered. Yes, it is. Is it illegal? Yes. Are you going to send Mom to jail? I paused. No, I said. But I am going to make sure she can't hurt me again. Zoe was quiet for a long time. Then she looked down at her cup and asked, Did you hate me? It hit me so hard I almost dropped my spoon. Hate you, I said. Why would you think that? Because we lived in that house. We had everything. And you didn't even come over. I thought, maybe you didn't want to see me anymore. I reached across the table and took her hand. Zoe, I love you. Nothing your parents do will ever change that. Her chin wobbled. I just wanted to swim in the lake, she said. I didn't know it was a bad house. And that right there was why I'd told her the truth. Because she needed to understand that some homes are built on lies. That luxury doesn't mean goodness. That sometimes the people you love can do the wrong thing. And you still get to choose who you want to be. When Amy came to pick her up, she didn't get out of the car. Zoe hugged me tight at the door, then looked up and said, Thanks for telling me, even if it hurt. I kissed her forehead. Truth always hurts a little, but it heals too. She nodded and ran down the path. I watched her climb into the back seat. She didn't say anything to Amy, just buckled in and stared out the window. As they drove away, I could feel something shift. Zoe had started to see. I called June after they left. Told her, I said, How did it go? She listened. She understood. You did the right thing, June said. Even if they won't thank you for it. I didn't do it for them, I replied. I did it for her. And I knew in my gut that one day Zoe would remember that. Not the parties, not the lake, not the story her parents crafted, but the truth her grandmother had the courage to say out loud. After Zoe left, I sat in the living room for a long time. No music, no TV, no distraction. Just me, a cup of tea, and the echo of her small voice saying thanks for telling me, even if it hurt. It rang in my head like a bell, not because it was painful, but because it was honest. That kind of honesty had been missing from my life for a long time. I looked around the room, really looked. There were things I hadn't paid attention to in years. The framed photo of James and me from our 25th anniversary. He was smiling at me like I hung the moon. The faded doily my mother crocheted when I was still in high school. The bookshelf full of novels I swore I'd reread when I retired. This house, it wasn't just walls. It was a witness to my struggles, to my joys, to the life I built with care and sacrifice. And someone had tried to take that from me. Worse, they thought I wouldn't fight back. But they were wrong. I started making a new list in my journal. What they took, my name, my trust, my credit, my peace, my dignity, my place in their story. And then I turned the page. What I reclaimed, my voice, my boundaries, my story. my courage, my future. June called the next morning with an update. The court date is set, pre-trial hearing in 3 weeks. I didn't flinch. Good, I said, let's move forward. They might try to settle again, she warned, or throw character attacks into the mix. They already have, I said, to everyone in town, to Zoe, probably even to their lawyer. June was quiet for a moment, then gently, are you ready for that kind of exposure? I didn't answer right away. Then I think I'm more afraid of disappearing quietly than I am of speaking loudly. I spent that afternoon digging through the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. It was full of old memories, James's cufflinks, a stack of birthday cards from Marcus when he was still in middle school, a blue knit cap from when Zoe was born. I found the handwritten letter James left me in his will, the one I hadn't reread in years. Maggie, if you're reading this, it means I've gone before you as I always feared I might. I want you to know how proud I am of the life we made, of how strong you are, of how much you gave to this family. But never let them take more than you can give, sweetheart. Never become invisible. You matter. You always have. I cried, harder than I had since the day he died. But it wasn't grief that pulled the tears out of me. It was release. It was his voice telling me that even now, even after betrayal, silence, and war, I was still here. I still mattered. A few days later, I ran into Deirdre Marcus's co-worker's wife at the farmer's market. She approached me cautiously, her sunglasses perched like armor. Margaret, she said, I just want to say, I heard what happened, and I'm sorry. I blinked, not sure what to say. We were all fed the story about the house being your gift, she admitted. Amy was very convincing, but now people are starting to talk, and not in their favor. I just nodded, thank you. Before she left, she added, it's brave what you're doing. No one had called me brave in a long time. It felt strange, but good. That night, I picked up the phone and dialed Audrey, my oldest friend. The one who saw me through James's cancer. The one who taught me how to use online banking. The one who never once asked me to be anything but myself. When I told her everything, she didn't interrupt. She just listened. Then she said, you've already won, you know. I haven't even gone to court yet. No, but you came back to yourself. That's bigger. It occurred to me sitting on my back porch with the cool autumn air brushing my face that healing doesn't feel like a victory parade. It feels like breathing. It feels like choosing tea over wine, a book over a headline, the quiet truth over the loud performance. It feels like no longer apologizing for taking up space. The phone buzzed again that evening. A number I didn't recognize. I answered it cautiously. Grandma Zoe's voice small and uncertain. Can I come over tomorrow? Of course. Can we bake cookies like we used to? My heart clenched. Yes, baby, we can do anything you want. After I hung up, I made one last note in my journal. What I was never meant to lose, but almost did. My granddaughter's trust. My sense of self. My right to say no. My legacy. And I underlined the last one twice. Because legacy, I've learned, isn't about what you leave behind in your will. It's about what you stand up for while you're still here. I used to be terrified of courtrooms. I pictured them as cold, echoing places filled with stiff chairs and colder faces. People in suits speaking a language I didn't understand. I thought of them as arenas for other people. Louder people. Smarter people. Younger people. Not women like me. Not widows with trembling hands and a heart too tender from being bruised by their own blood. But on the morning of my pre-trial hearing, I didn't feel scared. I felt steady. June met me at the courthouse steps. She was dressed like a blade-clean line's confident posture, a briefcase in one hand and compassion in her eyes. You ready? She asked. I nodded. And I was. Not because I wanted a fight, but because I no longer feared being seen. Inside the courtroom, I recognized Marcus right away. He was sitting with his lawyer, back straight, jaw clenched. Amy wasn't beside him, probably advised to stay away to minimize distractions, or more likely emotional damage. But I noticed something immediately. He didn't look like someone who was winning. He looked like someone unraveling. I took my seat behind June, keeping my gaze forward. This was not about vengeance. It was about truth, and finally saying it where it mattered. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, entered the courtroom and glanced down at her docket. Mrs. Margaret Elston versus Mr. Marcus Elston and Mrs. Amy Elston, case number 7228C. She read it aloud like any other case. like it wasn't the biggest thing I'd ever done in my life. She asked the usual questions, acknowledged the complaint, confirmed we were pursuing civil damages and potentially criminal referral. Marcus's lawyer tried to object, citing family hardship, misunderstanding incomplete evidence. June stood and spoke with the kind of clarity that made even my hands go still. Your Honor, this is not a misunderstanding. We have a forged signature, bank records that trace the loan payments to a company set up by the defendants. We have evidence that the plaintiff's social security number tax returns and private documents were used without consent. This is identity theft, plain and simple. That it occurred within a family makes it no less illegal. If anything, it makes it more disturbing. I watched Marcus as she spoke. His face didn't twitch, didn't blink, but I saw it in his hands, his knuckles whitening around the edge of the table. The judge requested that we proceed to formal mediation before setting a trial date. She looked at Marcus directly. Mr. Elston, do you understand the seriousness of these accusations? He nodded stiffly. Yes, Your Honor. But not once did he look at me. After the hearing, June and I stepped out into the bright autumn light. I exhaled slowly. You were brilliant, I told her. So were you, she said. You didn't flinch. I wanted to, I admitted. But then I remembered. If I flinch, they win. June smiled. You've come a long way, Margaret. I had. Not long ago, I was the woman who avoided confrontation, who whispered in kitchens and apologized for existing too loudly, who assumed that love, even abusive love, was better than no love at all. Now, I walked out of a courthouse with my head high, my heart open, and my name intact. That evening, Zoe called again. Grandma, she said, can I ask something kind of weird? Of course. If I ever mess up really bad, would you still love me? I smiled even as my eyes welled. Yes, I said, but I'd also expect you to take responsibility. There was a pause on her end. Okay, she said, that makes sense. Then before hanging up, she added, I'm proud of you. I sat on the porch that night with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, the chill of the season, finally breaking through the last bits of summer. Somewhere in the distance, I heard an owl. Somewhere deeper inside, I heard my own voice. Clear, true, unshaken. The courtroom hadn't scared me. Not because it wasn't intimidating, it was, but because I finally knew who I was. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The settlement offer increased to $25,000 the following week. A new letter, a new envelope, a new lawyer. Same guiltless tone. In the interest of preserving family dignity and minimizing unnecessary public proceedings, our clients are prepared to offer additional financial compensation. This gesture is not an admission of wrongdoing, but a desire to move forward in peace. Peace. Funny how they wanted peace now that they were losing control. I held the letter in my hands, its weight heavier than its paper. I didn't need their money. What I needed was accountability. What I needed was to be seen. Later that day, I met Audrey at the community center cafe. We sat by the window sipping tea, watching the leaves swirl outside, like confetti tossed by a gentler world. I got another offer, I told her. Her eyebrows raised. More money? $25,000. She let out a low whistle. And what are they buying with that? My silence, my name, my history. Audrey shook her head. They think dignity has a price. I nodded. They always have. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then remind them what it costs to betray a woman like you. That night, I laid the letter on the coffee table beside the others, each one a monument to how far they were willing to go to avoid saying we did wrong. I reread my journal entry from the night after court. I walked in afraid they'd tear me apart. I walked out knowing they couldn't. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about closure. It was about making a declaration not to them, but to myself, that I would no longer live afraid of what they might take next. Because they had already taken so much. And I was still here. The next day, June called. They've hired a PR consultant, she said, trying to manage public perception before the trial. I'm not surprised. They'll probably leak some version of the story, say you volunteered the documents, or that you were confused. It's common. I'm ready, I said. And I was. Let them spin it. Let them try. Because this time I had the truth. And I had something else they never expected. A voice I wasn't afraid to use. The trial was 2 weeks away, but in town the story was already spreading. A clerk at the pharmacy told me she heard whispers. A woman at the grocery store leaned in and said, "It's about time someone held them accountable." And then at the farmer's market, I saw Frank, Amy's older brother. He looked different than I remembered, more tired, less cocky. He approached me hesitantly. "Margaret," he said, "I know this is none of my business, but I just want you to know, I tried to talk her out of it." "I believe you," I said. "She's always been determined. She's always been entitled," I corrected gently. He sighed. "I'm sorry, for what it's worth." I nodded. "It's worth something." Later, when I told June, she smiled. "Funny thing about justice," she said. "Once it starts, it spreads." "What do you mean?" "Other people start standing up too. You'd be amazed how many women your age go through what you've gone through just in silence." That night, I opened my laptop and began typing something new. Not a journal entry. A letter to women like me. Women who gave and gave and gave. Women who were used, dismissed, erased. Women who were told that silence was strength, that aging was weakness, that motherhood meant martyrdom. It began like this. "To whoever you are, if you feel invisible, this is your reminder you are not. If someone has taken from you what you didn't offer, you have the right to fight. If your name was used to build someone else's dream, then it's time to reclaim your story." I did, and so can you. I hadn't realized it until that moment. But the fight wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman who had been made small and was finally standing tall. The cost of justice was real. Time, energy, tears, estrangement, loneliness, rumors. But the reward, knowing who I was, knowing I could look in the mirror and see someone who had the courage to stop being used, someone who said enough and meant it, someone who became the author of her own ending and her own beginning. That night, I slept better than I had in months. And in the morning, I sent June an email with 3 words. We move forward. The courtroom was quiet the morning of the final hearing. Not heavy, just still. Like the moment right before a page turns. I walked in beside June, dressed in navy blue. The same color James used to say brought out the strength in my eyes. Marcus was already seated with his lawyer. Amy wasn't there, and that said everything. She could forge my name, spend my money, lie to my face. But she couldn't sit in a room where she'd be forced to look at what she did, not even for her own defense. The trial didn't last long. The facts were solid, the evidence overwhelming. The judge, stern, composed, efficient, summarized it plainly. The loan in question was taken out using forged documents. The plaintiff has provided medical records proving she was elsewhere on the date of the signature. Expert handwriting analysis confirms the signature was not hers. Payments were traced to a corporate account linked to the defendant. The house was deeded to a shell company in an attempt to obscure ownership. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. My breath caught, but not from surprise. From validation, the court ordered the following. The mortgage was nullified. The house's fraudulently acquired property would be seized and sold by the bank. Marcus and Amy were to pay me $20,000 in damages. Their actions would be referred to the district attorney's office for review. Marcus didn't flinch, but he didn't look up either. Not once. Afterward, June and I stepped outside. The wind had picked up, tugging at the hem of my coat. "You did it," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "It's over." "No," I corrected her with a soft smile. "It's just beginning." The town, of course, buzzed for days. I didn't go out much, not because I was ashamed, but because I needed quiet. Healing doesn't always look like a party. Sometimes it looks like tea, or tending a garden you nearly gave up on, or painting your bedroom a new color just because it's yours and no one else gets to say otherwise. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. This time, the handwriting was familiar. It was from Zoe. "Dear Grandma, Mom says I shouldn't write to you, but I wanted to anyway. I know things are weird and hard, but I just want to say I love you, and I think what you did was brave. I'm sorry for everything, even if I didn't do it. I just want us to be okay again someday. Love, Zoe." I held the letter to my chest for a long time. Tears rolled down my cheeks, quiet and grateful. Because children don't stay children forever, and someday she'll know everything. And when she does, I want her to know her grandmother told the truth. Loudly, lovingly, unapologetically. Weeks turned into months. Amy and Marcus sold what they could. The bank took the house. Their faces disappeared from local events, holiday gatherings, and school boards. As for me, I started teaching a writing class at the senior center. 12 women, 12 stories of quiet, courageous survival. We wrote about motherhood, aging, loss, love, boundaries. One day I read my class the letter I wrote to myself the day after court. When I finished one woman, Janice stood up and said, "You should publish that." And so I did. A short essay. Title my name, my legacy, my final word. Because in the end, this wasn't about a house. It was about who I got to be in the last chapter of my life. Not someone's stepping stone, not someone's co-signer, not someone's shadow, but a woman with a voice, a name, a story, a legacy that was hers to write. And now I leave this story with you, not to spark scandal, but to ignite strength. To anyone who's been erased, manipulated, or made small. You are not too old, you are not too late, and you are not alone. Speak up, write it down, leave a record. Let your name be something no one ever dares to forge again. Because it is yours, and it is sacred. Just like you,